Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or The Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my top 5 defenses to stream for week number 9 of the 2022 fantasy football season. Inside today's video, I'm going to be going in depth, do that nice deep dive into all these defenses, and I'll be telling you guys why I believe you should be streaming all of these defenses for week number 9. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. And if you do want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. I would also like to ask that if you guys have any questions about week number 9, to please make sure that you ask down below in the comment section, or you can ask down below in the Discord, which is linked in our video description and in the pinned comment of every single video. So make sure you guys check that out. And without further ado, let's get into our week number 9 defenses to stream. We begin with my number 1 defense to be streaming for week number 9, the Kansas City Chiefs, going up against the Tennessee Titans at home in Kansas City. Currently, the Chiefs defense is owned in 28% of leagues on Yahoo Fantasy. So if you play on NFL, ESPN, CBS, any of those other fantasy football platforms, then the ownership percentage could be slightly different. Though I will note in some cases, the ownership percentage might be drastically different depending on the platform. So the Chiefs were on bye in week number 8 last week. So we have to go ahead and hop in the time machine and go back to week 7 for their defensive stats. In that game, the defense dominated 50 Shades of Grey style up against the San Francisco 49ers in San Francisco. They had 5 sacks, 2 interceptions, 1 fumble recovery, 1 safety, and 23 points allowed. This week, they get the Titans, and right now, it seems pretty up in the air if we'll see Malik Willis or Ryan Tannehill. But with how Tannehill has performed this year, he's just been pretty mid, been pretty I don't really think it matters too much, especially since the Chiefs defense has recently kind of caught fire like that Hunger Games book recently, and I really do think that the Chiefs defense is going to perform very well up against the Titans outside of against Derrick Henry, because Derrick Henry is bound to just run train on any defense. So week 8, the Texans defense looked good up against Malik Willis against the Tennessee Titans at home in Houston, having not 1, not 2, but 3 sacks in that game, 1 interception, 1 fumble recovery, and 17 points allowed. Now, ultimately, the Texans lost that game because the Texans are an absolute fucking dumpster fire. But if the Titans played up against a real team and a real defense like the Kansas City Chiefs, then the Kansas City Chiefs would have wiped the fucking floor with them. And again, I would prefer for the Chiefs defense to play against Malik Willis, but even if they play up against Ryan Tannehill, I still believe they're the number 1 defense to be streaming on the week. At number 2, we got the Minnesota Vikings going up against the Washington Commanders. In Washington, the Vikings defense is currently owned in 20% of leagues on Yahoo. So week 8 up against the Arizona Cardinals in Arizona, the Minnesota Vikings had 4 sacks, 2 interceptions, 1 fumble recovery, and 26 points allowed. And while the Arizona Cardinals offense has been pretty hit or miss thus far this season, they are a far superior offensive unit when compared to the Commanders. The Indianapolis Colts defense, who have definitely been a disaster this season, went up against the Commanders last week in week 8. They had 2 sacks, 1 interception, and 17 points allowed. Now again, I've talked about it a ton on this channel, how I like Taylor Heinicke. I genuinely think Taylor Heinicke is a very interesting player to watch. The guy makes all these big throws, but when he does these crazy things where he says, fuck it, Terry McLaurin's out there somewhere, throws a bomb into a wide receiver that is covered by 3 people, sometimes Terry's going to make the play. But other times, the interception is going to grab that ball and take it directly to the crib. So I think the Vikings defense that has looked stout thus far this season, this whole Vikings team has really been impressive this year. I think that the Vikings defense should have no issue with the Commanders this week, and that is why they're my number 2 defense to be streaming on the week. At number 3, we have the Arizona Cardinals going up against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle, currently owned in 11% of leagues. Now, the last time that these two teams went toe-to-toe was back in week number 6, and the Cardinals defense had one of their best performances of this whole season, despite losing the game 9-19. In that game in Seattle at Seattle, they had 5 sacks, 1 fumble recovery, 1 touchdown, and 19 points allowed. Now, again, the Cardinals don't have this world-beating defense, but I do think that this division rivalry matchup will be low-scoring just like the first time out. We've seen Kyler Murray at points really struggle, and we've also seen that Geno Smith isn't necessarily fucking Superman. Now, he's been having these great games, but I do think that this game will end up being incredibly close. The Cardinals defense up against the Vikings applied pressure last week in Minnesota, 3 sacks, 1 fumble recovery, and 34 points allowed. I really do think that this Cardinals defense is going to be able to put up points, put Mr. Geno Smith on his ass. Now, the Giants played up against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle last week, and they had 3 sacks, 1 fumble recovery, and 27 points allowed. Again, I really don't think this is going to be that tit-for-tat high-scoring game. Now, personally, for fantasy football, obviously, if you're not talking about defenses, I would love for Kyler and Geno to both go tit for tat in this game. For Kyler to throw for a zillion yards. DeAndre Hopkins has a huge game. Metcalf has a huge game. Lockett has a huge game. But that's probably not what is going to happen. These two teams are going to play each other incredibly close. And while I would love for this offensive firepower fucking back and forth game, ultimately, I don't think that's what we're going to end up getting on Sunday. But before we pivot into the number 4 defense to stream, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our sponsor of today's video. They've been on your screen this whole entire time. I'm pointing to them right now. They're on my hat. My hat's on backwards, but I'll flip it around for half of a second. It is BetMGM, and they have a no-brainer offer for the NBA tonight that you want to be taken advantage of. If you bet $10 tonight on any pregame money line in the NBA, you will win $200 if anyone hits a three-pointer in the NBA tonight, which is guaranteed to happen. That's why it's a no-brainer. Someone is bound to hit a three-pointer in the NBA tonight. It might be in the first 12 seconds of the first game that starts tonight. So again, all you got to do is be a new user to BetMGM. Sign up using the link in the video description down below. And if you bet $10 on any pregame money line, you'll win $200 in free bets if anyone hits a three-pointer, which is guaranteed to happen. This offer doesn't last forever, so make sure that you take advantage of it right now before it disappears again. Make sure you click on the link in the video description or in the pinned comment to activate your offer. Back on into things at number 4, we have the Miami Dolphins going up against the Chicago Bears in Chicago, currently owned in 43% of leagues. Week 8 up against the Detroit Lions in Detroit. As a Dolphins fan, this first half, the Miami Dolphins defense got bent over a table and fucking sodomized by the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions offense took turns running train on the Dolphins defense. 1 sack, 27 points allowed. It was an absolute disaster. It was a disaster, but I think we all knew deep down in our minds that that could happen because the Lions, while they kind of shit the bed the 2 weeks prior, have one of the best offenses in the NFL. But I will note that this is the second game in a row where the Dolphins defense woke up in the second half and allowed 0 points in the second half of the game. They didn't allow a single point in the second half of the Steelers game or in the second half of the Lions game. I'm going to send a prayer to the fantasy football gods above that the offense, or the defense, I should say, wakes up in the first half. Because if the defense is alive against the Bears in the first half, then I know the Bears' offenses look better. I have given them so much credit recently. But when the Dolphins' defense is playing up to their maximum abilities, they're one of the best defenses in the NFL, so I hope that they actually show up to start the game. Week 8, the Dallas Cowboys went up against the Chicago Bears. In that game, the defense of the Cowboys had 4 sacks, 1 fumble recovery, 1 touchdown, and 29 points allowed. And the Dolphins' defense is good at creating pressure. They just need to stop getting so many goddamn penalties. So the first 3 defenses, in my opinion, are the 3 best. The Dolphins are pretty iffy to me, but again, the Bears' offense is also pretty iffy, and I just hope that the defense plays a lot better in the first half, because if they do, they could wipe the floor with the Bears' offense. Final defense to be streaming, the Cincinnati Bengals going up against the Carolina Panthers in Cincinnati, currently owned in 40% of leagues on Yahoo Fantasy. Now, the Bengals play tonight up against the Cleveland Browns, and I'm not someone who can go to the fucking future. I don't know what happens in the future. I'm not Marty McFly. So what I will tell you is the defensive stats for the Bengals in week number 7. In week 7, up against the Atlanta Falcons, the Bengals defense locked them up behind bars. 3 sacks, 17 points allowed. And then in week 8, interesting enough, the Falcons defense went up against the Carolina Panthers. And in that game, the Falcons defense looked good, aside from the fact that DJ Moore had that huge touchdown where he thought he was Stephon Diggs and threw his fucking helmet like he won the game. And then obviously that's a penalty. Their kicker is absolute dog shit, so he misses the extra point. And then he misses another field goal. I mean, the guy was a disaster. And then besides Donta Foreman running train, look, let's be honest, the Falcons defense is pretty bad, and they still got 1 sack, 1 interception, 1 touchdown, and 34 points allowed. I understand the Bengals aren't this world-beating defense, but I do think that the Bengals defense ultimately shows up against an offense that I don't view as really all that good in the Carolina Panthers. I think the Bengals will have the answers to the fucking test, whereas the Falcons defense in week 8 simply did not have that. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you did end up enjoying, make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. While you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you do want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. Make sure you check out our BetMGM offer. Again, bet $10 on any pregame money line. If you're a new user using the link in the video description, you'll win $200 if any team hits a 3-pointer in the NBA tonight, which is fucking guaranteed to happen. So make sure you guys check that out. I love you guys all. Hope you guys have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, good boy.